Yeah, we're live. and once again trying to focus. I'm back for my trip to West Tech Performance, and I'm still trying to focus with my fancy. That's not cooperating, man. Today we're going to talk about the. I did a bunch of testing while I was down there, even though I was only down there on the dyno for like a day and a half. I still got a lot of stuff done. So we ran the 4.8 liter, we ran the M90 supercharger, and I ran a ton of different things in addition to running the blower, and it worked out very well. but as always, there's problems with that. But I ran some NA testing, and so the one I want to talk about today on the live feed is we ran the electric water pump the way that I normally do, but we also ran accessories, because when I was running the supercharger, we had to run full accessories. So one of the things I wanted to do that I didn't do in the previous M90 blower setup is I ran the thing the way that we normally do with an electric water pump. We ran an NA, and then I put all the accessories on, then we put the blower on. People were saying, well, that's going to take away some of the power, and it does. And so I wanted to find out exactly how much power that does take away before, in another video, and that video is up. You guys can take a look. I did an accessory test where we tried to find out what the individual, how much each one of them were worth. And in this case, what I did was we configured the motor with the alternator, the power steering, and the factory water pump with all the factory pulleys on it. The power steering, we obviously didn't have going to a power steering rack. We just had it looped, but it was circulating fluid. The alternator, we did not have a load on it, so we were just spinning the alternator. The water pump was doing what the water pump always does. So we ran that, and then we took all of that off and then put the electric water pump on, and we measured the power. So that was one of the NA tests. The other test that we did, I ran an E85 versus gas test. And for the first time in all of the NA stuff that I've done and all this low compression Gen 3 and Gen 4 LS stuff, the E85 actually showed some power. So I was surprised. I was both happy and surprised, because I was happy that maybe when I run the 5.3, the one that's making 540 horsepower, that if we put E85 in it and then subsequently methanol, that we could gain even more power. So that would be very cool. I got my fingers crossed that we add power. I also did a lightweight flywheel test, which is very, very interesting. And I got lots of good data on that. And all these videos are going to be coming out. But I ran a steel flywheel and a steel drive plate. And then we changed the flywheel combination weight by 30 pounds. We did that by putting on a flex plate and an even smaller diameter. So we didn't just change the weight, we changed the diameter. So we made an even greater change in moment of inertia, an aluminum drive plate. So we compared both of those. We just ran the motor. It was tuned, an optimized tune, and then took it off of the dyno. I mean, it's still on the cherry picker, and then just turned it around, zipped the flywheel and the drive plate off, put a new flywheel and drive plate on, and put it back on. I mean, the thing was still warm when we were doing it. So, and then we ran it again, and we were able to compare the change in flywheel weight, which is very, very cool. So it's good data. So it'll be fun stuff. Plus, we ran the M90. We ran the M90 with a 3.8 pulley, a 3.0 pulley, and a 2.6 pulley. And then in another live feed this week, we're going to discuss what actually happened on the previous test, because I think I know now the mistake that I made on the 3800 test before. It should have actually made more power. And one of the things I mentioned already, the fact, well, I ran accessories on it versus not having accessories, and then which makes a difference in power. But also there was another little hiccup that I didn't realize, and I didn't realize until I got into this testing and I was running logs. So I started logging all of the runs on the Holley HP. And then after comparing the log to what was happening, I'm like, oh yeah, there's something going on here that we needed to now fix. And so we could see what was going on. So it's pretty cool. But the M90 worked out well. It did make power. It did make boost. It made more power than the NA motor. So that's the video that I'm working on today. And I will have that up today for you guys, so you guys can check it out. But good news for all the junkyard people, these inexpensive M90s, you can make boosts, especially if you have a stock 4.8 or a 5.3. You can definitely make power with the M90, and you could put it on there. The problem being, and that's kind of what we'll talk about today, the accessory test is very, very cool, and we're gonna, that's another video that's coming out as well. But on the M90, it's always something. So we can go to the wrecking yard and find an M90 and the throttle body and all that stuff, but there are a couple of problems with that. One, there's no TPS. I mean, they have a dedicated plug and stuff, which you'd have to convert over to work on your LS motor or put an LS throttle body on it. And then you'd have to have some sort of adapter to be able to do that. The other thing is you have to have an intake manifold. So for me, what I did on this is we ran it on a Holley high ram, because then all I had to do was make an adapter plate, just a flat piece of aluminum basically, and then drill the necessary holes to bolt that plate to the high ram, and then cut the hole in it and for the discharge from the blower, and then cut the hole in it for the bypass valve, and then line the blower up so that the pulley was in the correct position and alignment with the front crank damper, and then away you go. And once we mounted the blower on there, it was discharging into basically the open common plenum of the high ram, and we had boost and we had power. The thing that was happening is that's interesting, and when you take you can take the whole blower and adapter plate assembly off, and that's what we did. So we ran the lid NA on the high ram and then took that off and then just mounted the blower on there. It was very easy. I mean, it takes 10 minutes or something to do the swap, at least on the engine dyno. But the interesting thing is when you look at where the discharge is on the supercharger, that it's centered over maybe 4 of the ports, and then are the back ones getting any? Are they getting as much as the front ones? So let me know in the comments what you guys think. In fact, that could be our poll for today. Okay, when the blower exit is positioned over just 4 of the cylinders, you got a square opening and it's over 4 cylinders and the 4 are back here. Do they get more airflow than the rest? Does the blower position, the exit position of the blower, the discharge, does it favor those 4 cylinders? Let's see what people think. Let's see what people think. And then the other question is, on that situation, if that's happening, should we put a diverter in there that angles air, like maybe halfway or something, make a little ski jump plate so that we can direct air back toward the back? Let me know what you guys think. We see this happen a lot because the blower discharge is only so big, and it's not discharging, in the center of the intake manifold. But when it discharges into like an intercooler, I think maybe that helps diffuse some of the air and equalize some of the airflow. But you guys let me know what you think. I would like to run an intercooler on this, but we were eventually running E85 on this thing, and we were only at about 155 or 57 kPa. So we're only about 8 pounds of boost maximum. That was with a little 2.6 pulley. And one of the guys had asked on the live feed, 2 things. One, I didn't do the bubbler test. So whoever had asked me for the bubbler test, I didn't realize I wanted to do it and had planned to, and I even had the plug in the back already set up to do it, but didn't remember to do that until after I had pulled the blower off and we were already swapping intakes and stuff. So I didn't have enough time to go back and revisit that test. So I'm sorry, but we will do that again, and I will definitely do that test. It's very easy. All we have to do is take the plug out. We will do that. But no, I don't. I don't know where I was going. The one thing we did do on this test compared to the previous time when we ran the M90 is we did a different blower. Also, we did the Gen 5 supercharger, and before we were doing the L67 blower on throttle body, both of which are smaller. So I mean, the blower flows less and the throttle body is smaller. So you kind of have a double whammy there. And the Gen 5 blower definitely better. And then, we stepped up our game with pulley sizes and stuff. And then eventually the the E85, which all blower stuff, but I would like to run an intercooler on there. That would be cool. I'm not sure, given how big the mounting ears are on this M90. Like, I'd like to put this on a like Holley low ram. I mean, the high ram will make more power because it has more runner length, so it would be better ultimately for what we're doing. But it is fairly tall. But if we could put this on a low ram, I don't know if the ears on the blower and the adapter plate will fit inside where it has to go on the fuel rails, because right now all of that's above the fuel rails. I don't know that that's going to fit in there. I should have checked it. We had a low ram there for a rec port application that the guys from West Tech had, or the guys from Motor Trend. So I should have tested it, but it would be interesting to see. I think that would make a better package. But in my discussion, yeah, we can go to the wrecking yard and get a cheap blower, you know, $100 or $150 or whatever they cost. And then making an adapter plate, I can have adapter plates machined to make this, like with Tom DeMuse or one of these guys can make these adapter plates so that you could mount that on there. But you still have to have a manifold. So you're still going to have to buy a Holley manifold or something to do that. And then you're going to have to go through the issues that I talked about with throttle bodies to make this work. None of it is insurmountable, and it still might be a viable option for guys to do a low buck blower upgrade. And then also, this adapter plate that goes on these could easily be used for an M122, you know, an M112, other blowers that would, you know, have the capability of making more power. I mean, I guess you could put a 2650 on there and make that work. I think Tom has done that on the stuff that he sells. So that's all possible. But it would be nice to have, you know, an adapter plate. And if you had to buy a Holley manifold, I don't know what those cost. Somebody can let me know. I guess we can look that up on Summit. Let's see what a... Holley low ram Summit. Oh, see, it's like $700 or almost $750 or something. So maybe you could just buy because you don't need the lid. So maybe you could just buy the lower manifold. Oh yeah, the low ram's $448. So if you could buy the fuel rails, you know, maybe $500 or $600. So maybe you could get the blower set up for like $1,000 or $1,500 each. And somebody mentioned the blower on each bank. Yes, I'm going to do 2 of them. Definitely. That's the next thing. I would like to make more power with the M90. I might talk to the Jokers guys about porting one of these and making more power. Somebody, one of the guys was asking about spinning this blower up to 20,000. And I did the calculations on it with our stock truck dampener, which is pretty big. And then the 2.6 pulley running the RPM range that we were running, we ran this thing to almost 19,000 RPM. So we were already getting fairly close there. And if we had a 2.5 pulley, which they make, we could have spun this thing up a little bit faster and made a little bit more power. But we're near that kind of blower speed. Honestly, I think if I put something else besides the Truck Norris NSR camshaft in it, that we could also make more power. So there'd be different ways to go about this. I don't know. I mean, we had enough timing it and stuff, so I don't know what we would do to get more power. What I'd like to see is if we could get the Jokers guys to do a ported version of this Gen 5 M90, and then I'd like to put a giant size throttle body on it. I'd like to cut that flange off and put a 4-inch tube on it and run 105 millimeter, like a fast throttle body or something, or a Holley throttle body. It would be, you know, more air in would definitely be helpful. I didn't measure what the vacuum was there behind the stock throttle body. Wait till you see my Super Richie drive-by wire linkage. It's crude. But it opened the throttle body all the way every time. Every time I went back to check it, it was spot on. So I was happy about that. In fact, the throttle linkage took the longest of all of the things because I did a lot of prep with this ahead of time. I had to get different belts for the NA one, different belt for the 3.8 pulley, and then different belts for the smaller pulleys, the 3.0 and the 2.5. But the cool thing is that there didn't seem to be any belt slippage. I even mentioned that in the video that I thought that there would be, but we had pretty good belt wrap because when we ran the blower, we bypassed the alternator. So we brought both sides of the belt down, one to an idler, and then one went down to the power steering. So I think we had pretty good belt wrap, and it seemed if you look at the boost curve logged on the Holly, it was pretty good. We didn't see any droppage or anything, so it's pretty cool. So let's see what you guys got going on this morning. Hello, everybody. Yes, I am back. This makes me happy. I know it, and I think putting this blower on a 4.8, like on a truck application, would be really, really cool. I'm running an M90 with a smaller pulley. What else can I do to improve the blower? What are you running it on? The throttle inlet side is very important. If you can get more air in, any of the inlet stuff that you can improve, including the throttle body size, porting the blower, all of that helps. Hello from Wisconsin at the yard. You're saying how you have too many LSs, 5360s. They're keeping as many as they can. So especially, are you saying that they have too many in the wrecking yard? Do they want to get rid of some of the 6 liters? I need to come out there and get them. You can use brake fluid for your blinker fluid, though. Use it for fuel. I just use rainwater. I like the ski jump idea. I don't know if the divider, because back in the day, who was it that made the elbows for somebody made elbows. It was like Demon or somebody like that. Made the elbows for the 462 valves, and they had a divider in there to equalize the airflow, I guess, into the different sides. I guess that you are thinking that it divides that. Top fuel cars do all kinds of tricks that help even out boost per cylinder. I think the intercooler helps distribution. I agree. I think it does. We would like to have an intercooler brick on there. But given what this does, I actually could, I'd have to change the belt length, but we could sandwich one of those intercoolers that the various people make for the high rams for like the LS applications, because this blower would bolt right to that, because this adapter plate just has the bolt holes basically for the high ram, which all of those go through that kind of intercooler. Trying to build 1,000 wheel horsepower 5.3 with a 4L80. The 5.3 is forged rotating assembly, 10-to-1 compression, Elbrock Pro Flow XT, BTR Stage 2 turbo. What turbo would you recommend? For 1,000 wheel horsepower, I would look at an S480, something like that. With a bigger stall, is it recommended to upgrade flex plate, or is the stock okay? I think if are you drag racing it? Are you hitting this thing really hard with lots of power? If you are, then I would put something else. I would put an SFI flex plate on it. If it's just a street car, that will work. I know, Boost Novice. I was looking forward to to the leak test too. 2 M90s for on the cheap would work for a 4.8. Yeah, as long as somebody, I'm going to build the like little doghouse thing for that. 45-degree plated box, cape roof style upper plenums. You think about running an M90 on a fresh rebuild, 2-liter in a Camry. It's a more than enough blower for that. Looks like it will fit if I remove the AC compressor and use that location. Okay. My buddy wants something fast and has an 86 FET, an L98. It's an L98. It's not an LT1, but is it worth for him spending all his money on that LT1? Well, if it's an 86, it's an L98 and not an LT1. An LT1 is a different year and a different engine configuration. That's a Gen 2 small block Chevy. The L98 is an original Gen 1 deal. But he can make power with the L98. He'd have to change a lot of stuff. 86, and it's an 86 might still be an iron head unless it's a convertible. But it's a small block Chevy, so you can make power with a small block Chevy. He could also swap an LS into it. You had another poll where my knowledge is insufficient for me to vote. That's okay, just like our political system, exactly. That doesn't stop people from voting. And turbo into the M90. We did that on the 3800. You can vote for what you think would happen. It's okay. Yeah, here to say the sloppy stage 2 is the best. There you go. I thought that the best cam, the sloppy best cam, was the best cam. The AMR be big enough for a 2.3 liter Ford? It would be big enough as long as the NA motor is making 100 horsepower or less. Should do a comparison test for the 5.3 to find out what is truly the worst cam. Well, you could make really, really bad cams if you did custom ones, but I've never run anything that makes less power than the stock LM7 or LR4 cam. Can you lose power on a turbo setup by making the engine more efficient where it wants a bigger turbo? I've heard people say this, but while it's not in the same efficiency island, it has less boost. Where the turbo is, and I mean, how much boost the turbo is producing is not a function of the island of efficiency. It's a function of the wastegate. The wastegate is a simple diaphragm with a spring on it. So the only thing that it recognizes is pressure. If you have a combination that makes more NA power and you add 10 pounds of boost to it, it's going to make more power under boost than it did when it was making less NA power. So I haven't seen a situation ever where an NA combination that makes more NA power makes less power at the same boost. Have you tested the M90 on a 4-cylinder? No, I haven't, but we know what it will support now. So it will support any of those 4-cylinders, but I do want to run one on a 4-cylinder. Thanks for answering my question. Yeah, an S480 will get you to 1,000 wheel horsepower. They were complaining how good the LS is. They were hanging on to them all and understand the long-term value of the LS. It's the father-son small operation. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that the longer that they hold on to them, they're eventually going to be even more valuable. I have a 22R that I'm considering using an M90 on, but went with a TD04. That works too, obviously. I've seen lots of turbo 22Rs. All the trucks and vans we see here in Wisconsin, the yards are filled with rusted frames and running drivetrains. That's good. So the stock cam is the worst cam. It's the least powerful. It's the cam that I have in my truck, and I love it because it does exactly what I want it to do. But there are certainly ways to make a lot more power. If the blower boosts the plenum, doesn't the plenum act as a reserve for a cylinder runner? How many intake valves open simultaneously? Do you mean, does it act as a reservoir for the cylinders? If you look at, Ryan, if you did the math, because somebody was asking me about this. Well, if I have a bigger plenum, then I have more in reserve. That's not true. Do the calculations on the plenum volume, and then do the calculations on the CFM required to make the power that your motor makes at wide open throttle. And then do the calculation on how quickly it would empty that plenum. It doesn't act that way. Can you convert throttle body Gen 5 platform to a 2.4 barrel throttle body? Are you talking about a big block Chevy? You can put a dual quad manifold on a Gen 5 big block if that's your question, and then you could run either carburetors or 2 throttle bodies on it. I think an M90 might be too big for a 22R. I agree. If I was doing a 22R, I think I would look at one of the M62s, which you can find lots of those too, because they ran those before they started putting the M90s on the supercharged Pontiacs and Buicks and stuff. They had M62s on the first gen ones, and then you could run those, and that's a pretty good size blower for that. We ran M62s on a lot of stuff on Honda applications when Jackson Racing was doing those, and then on the Focus and stuff, and it worked good. Do the market cams that make less power than stock, what would they be used for? I mean, you could have a custom cam ground to anything that you want. I've seen custom cams done that would make less power than stock cams, but the reason that they want those are for some specific applications, like industrial engines that are only running at 1800 to 2000 RPM. So you actually would put smaller than what we would consider, like smaller than stock specs that we run on a 5.3 or a 4.8. You would have a smaller camshaft than that to optimize the power down at 1800 or 2000 RPM. When you reach the limit of turbos flow, it can be better heads, cam, lose power, I guess is my question. So you're flat plane, you're trying to create a situation where that's true? Is that what you're trying to do? If you are maximizing, if you have, it depends on which side you're doing, but if you have maximized the compressor flow, so it won't flow any more air, and you improve the NA power output of the motor, you're going to change the map position. And I guess it's possible that you could change it to where, well, the only thing I would see is if you overspeed the blower, because you're going to come down on if you increase the NA power, you're going to come down on the pressure ratio. I don't know how much you could change it though. You're not going to change it very much. You'd have to change it a lot. And all of this discussion is far out to the far side of the compressor map anyways. It's out in the area that you shouldn't be running when you're maximizing the airflow, because the compressor map, like the island of maximum efficiency, is about halfway up whatever the blower will flow. And so you're out at the end of that. And so I would say maybe you could create a situation like that, but it would definitely be the exception and not the rule. My Turbo 22R runs on pump gas pretty happily. After all, it's 9-to-1. Is it a carbureted Turbo 22R, or is it an EFI one? Richard, what were you guys running for intakes on the Hondas and the Fords? Well, back then, Oscar Jackson for Jackson Racing had dedicated castings that he made. So they were a very short runner, common plenum, flat flange for the blower, and the blower would sit on there, and in the drive assembly matched up to the crank. Has anybody made an elbow to bolt the 4-barrel to a fast for experimenting? Yeah, that was my next thing. I showed a video, or I showed a photo where one of the viewers did that to a 2-barrel. And it's just a flat flange that bolts to the 3-hole or 4-hole throttle body on the intake manifold on an LS, and then a 90-degree elbow, and then another flange. He mounted a 2-barrel, a 4412 500 CFM 2-barrel, but I'm just going to have it go out to a 4-barrel. Electric water pump on a road race car, I don't think it's a good idea. I think having the water speed change with RPM is a better idea. I'm changing from a stock LS3, LS7 injectors to 100-pound Holly. Do I need a whole new bass tune, or can I change something in the old tune so I can break the motor in? If you do have I would try that if I had an O2 sensor. So if I could actually read the air fuel, you can easily do that on the bass tune. But you can't double the fuel flow and break the motor in. It's going to be rich. You need to adjust it. Made my license passes a couple weeks ago. 3,700 pounds, 69 Camaro. Very cool. F2 Pro Charger. This thing's going to run a big number. 890s at 153. 50% TPS for the first 3 seconds because of tire shake. So when you get that thing hooked up and you can go to wide open throttle earlier on, that thing's gonna, I mean, 153 is already motoring pretty good. Massachusetts in the house. Using an early carb motor from a Celica. It's got a Holley 2-barrel with no choke horn on the air intake. It's a shortened wheelbase sand rail. Okay. So do you have the carburetor on top of the blower or the turbo, in front of the turbo or after the turbo? Is it a blow through or a draw through? We had great success for a couple years. The Grand National turbos on the 22R. Yeah, that was fairly common for guys to use the Grand National turbos because a lot of guys got rid of those. Only downside was it was laggy. Coming off Haltech World Cup, there was a couple of combos built for large turbos running in classes for small turbos. Could going backwards and header cam selection gain power on the smaller turbos? I followed Hanger 19 blow through mods, no intercooler. Okay. So how's our poll doing? 56% are saying yes. Do they get more airflow? So they're thinking more distribution right under the blower. Flat plane, your other question about the different classes and different turbos. If they did their combination for one turbo and they put the other turbo on, it might not be optimum. What I would be worried about going to a smaller turbo is getting to the flow limit of the hot side before you get to the flow limit of the cold side. Then you could create a problem. And then if you, I guess, detune the motor and made less NA power, then maybe you could get to you could reduce some back pressure and then get to the flow limits of both the hot and cold side, and it might make a little bit more power. Probably better off breaking in on stock injectors and changing injectors after break-in, maybe. Yeah, you could do that. There's a Plenum balance the runners for questions, guessing the boost equalized to its chamber. Plenum volume is a very misunderstood variable. Yeah, people don't understand what a resonating frequency is in a plenum. The John Causey's video demonstrates stuff really, really well on what these waves are actually doing and how fast they are. Watching the finger go, the cycle rate is just tremendous. But it's, the waves are traveling at the speed of sound up and back, so it's pretty fast. Flopping finger is a good one. I agree. When I saw that when he brought it out, and because I was at Engine and I was on the panel at the Advanced Engine Technology Conference, and that was amazing. That was super cool. I'd like to increase the Plenum volume on my LT4. And so I'm curious, Sean, what do you think is going to happen if you increase the Plenum volume on your LT4? You can actually do that by changing your intake tubing in front of the plenum. Still hear people confuse long runners for top end performance. The same thing happens with long tube headers too. Oh, the shorty headers or stock manifolds make more low speed power. Like, no, that's not how it happens. Sean, I was thinking LT4. I was thinking second gen LT4. I'm like, why did I don't understand that. But yeah, no, that makes a lot more sense. So like you'd like to increase the Plenum volume up to like say a 2650. That works pretty well. That's what that M90 needs, is a bigger rotor pack. It just needs more inlet, it just needs more inlet flow, I think. And discharge. First mod is always long tube headers. Yeah, that used to be the deal way back with small block Chevys. You definitely put the 3995 complete with the nuts, bolts, and gaskets from Super Shops. Can you tune for performance and fuel economy? Yes, you can. Your tune should be optimized for whatever things you have. So if you have a camshaft, you have ported heads, you have an intake manifold, you have a carburetor, whatever you have, your tune should be optimized for both of those. And it's very easy to optimize it for both of those, for whatever combination you have of cylinder heads, camshaft, intake, manifold, headers, carburetor, fuel injection, whatever you have. But you can make it do very well for performance at wide open throttle. You can optimize the tune for that. You can optimize the tune for idle and cruise, so it gets whatever fuel mileage it can get with that combination. But it's easy to tune for both of those. Just don't know how much power I can add to that Camaro Z01 before I ruin its ability to have traction. Yeah, it's pretty easy, and especially with a positive displacement blower, it's pretty easy to get past the available traction. don't important safety tip, don't Google finger flapping. I would imagine not. Almost anything that you would Google is going to come up with some sort of terrible thing. We used to call them belt driven intake manifolds. Yeah, boost is a really nice thing. I was very happy that we were able to finally give the M90 its due. But I would like to see, I hope the Jokers guys will do a blower on, do a ported housing and stuff. It'll be good. I'd like to see the M90 make some serious power. And this particular M90, not a hopped up version. Managed by my M90s from the junkyard as intake manifolds. That's good. That's the thing. A lot of people that work at some of these wrecking yards they're not car guy savvy. Overly, what's going? We finally put the 7875 on our AMC 3304. It ran amazing till the head gaskets left the chat. Boost reference line blew off the wastegate, spiked to 26 pounds. That's a lot. How much boost were you guys trying to run? What did you guys have it set at? I missed my SSEI Bonneville. Yeah. Boosted 3,800 for the win. I have seen a few of the smaller blowers at the wrecking yards when I've looked. It's rare. Mostly you see the L67s, but you do see some of the Gen 5 stuff, and then occasionally I'll see the smaller blower stuff. They had to pin the gate shut and send it. Yeah, that's probably a lot. Consistently run 18. Okay. It probably makes what turbo did you guys have on there before? Did you have a smaller turbo on there? Did you have a GT45 or something on that 304? I've only seen M62s on the Ecotech motors. They used them a lot on the 3800s. Could you do some videos on injector tuning? I have some. I'm first of all, I'm not a tuner, so I can't tell you how to tune, especially a factory ECU or any of those things, because I don't do any of that. I only do my tuning on the engine dyno where we're running at wide open throttle. And so I have videos up that show you, hey, here's what happens when you run it at 13 to 1 and 12 to 1 and 10 to 1 and 11 to 1. And here's what happens when you run 29 degrees of timing, like on NALS, or 27 or 25 or 20 or 15 or whatever. Do they spin the right way for a Honda? Yes. What's your opinion on two-ported M90s on a 5.3? I think it's a good idea. I'm going to run two M90s on the 5.3. I'm going to build that, and I don't. They don't have to be ported, but you know those things. I'm sure that two M90s would make 1,000 horsepower, and ported ones maybe even more. Is there any way to steal the rotor pack out of the V6 Audi cars? I don't know. I don't know what size that is. Does anybody know what size blower I'm not Audi proficient. Yeah, two M90s would do 700 pretty easily. There was an M90 direct swap twin screw rotor pack being made years ago. But a twin screw rotor pack in a M90 case isn't going to work very well. The inlet's wrong and the discharge is wrong on the case for a twin screw. Oh yeah, Mad Mod the inlet and the outlet case, yeah. Hot mess. What am I welcome about? My thought was better than a GT500 with less heat for pump gas. Yeah. Are you gonna have an intercooler on the two blowers? Because the boost is still going to be fairly high. To get to 1,000 horsepower, depending on what your NA motor is, the boost level is going to have to be high. So if you have that non-intercooled, that's not going to be a good idea. Because if you have one blower making 8 pounds and one blower making 8 pounds, you don't get 8 pounds. you get more than that. So we're kind of split here on the distribution. I could see when we took the blower assembly off and the adapter plate off of the high ram, you could see the there was a stain in the intake manifold near the 4 runners. So there was definitely something happening there that was not happening at the other runners. And I don't know if this is stuff coming off of the blower or it's leaking oil or what the deal is. You should do a twin turbo compound with 2 different turbo sizes. And I was reading about that, and I realized that I was completely wrong in my statement that because somebody had pointed this out. I thought on the Supra and on the RX-7 that they had 2 different size turbos, but they don't. They just have 2 turbos of the same size, and they're just bringing another one online so that it'd be the same thing as like having 2 blowers. You have one blower going, and then you have another blower going, and then it comes online. But with the turbos, they were the same size. I always thought that there was a small one and a big one, but that would be more problematic now that I think about it. Is it worth running an underdrive pulley on an LS1? Which are you trying to underdrive? I'm not a fan of underdrive pulleys because of the experiences I've had with them on a car that you're driving around. Like the 5-liter Mustangs, underdrive pulleys were a big thing back then, and probably for the F-body stuff too. But you slow the water pump down, which makes the thing like want to overheat when you're driving in traffic, when you're sitting idling and driving in traffic, which we did a lot in Southern California. And then also you slow the alternator down, you slow everything down. It does help make more power, but for me, the problems did not, like the gain did not outweigh the problems. M62 for a D16 would be neat for a K24. Yeah, it's not enough for a K24, not a 200 horsepower one. The D16 was good. We ran M45s on the D series stuff, and that worked okay. It would have been much better for what we were trying to do to run a 62 on it, but Oscar didn't make one of those back then. I was hoping to get away with it, but if necessary, I suppose I could put one in the low ram plenum, maybe. I'm sure it'll lose some boost rate. You're definitely going to, well, not lose boost. You're not losing airflow or power. You're gaining power from the intercooler. You're going to drop the pressure because you're dropping the temperature. So that's a natural byproduct of that. Richard, you got the notion for running a pair of twin M90s from me, turning you into Savage Garage's twin M90 Sunbird build. Okay, you could take credit for that, and I will thank you for it. I don't ever remember looking at a twin M90 Sunbird build. The only twin M90 that I remember looking at it way back was a 351 that somebody did, and then there was another one that a guy was doing. That he was doing it out of wood or something. Is that that one? What chance did you figure out how to test the distribution? Well, we could test distribution if we had 802 sensors on it. And that's something that we could try because we have, I think Westech has LS headers that have 802s in it. I didn't run it that way, but we could. Our ZL1 at 715 wheel horsepower requires careful throttle manipulation. I would imagine so. Dodge is doing a twin turbo, yeah, inline 6. Yep. I'm running an underdrive for my alternator for my 383, but the car has almost no electrics. And I like that situation better where you do individual underdrive pulleys and not a universal underdrive pulley on the crank. And so if you do a different alternator or a different water pump or whatever, you can try that and just don't make it as dramatic. One of the things I wish I would have done on the Mustang before I ran the Silver State is I wish I would have underdriven the water pump, because when we would run the thing, like, and it would go 146 or 7 miles an hour when it was stock. And it would do the same speed in fourth gear as it would do in fifth gear. It would just do it at a much lower RPM in fifth gear. But in sixth gear, when we were spinning the motor really fast, like 6,000 RPM or more, the motor would heat up because the water pump was cavitating. So if we could get the water pump speed down, we could get the cooling and pick up a little bit more power. Have you seen Saab V6s that only have one bank of cylinders driving the turbo? Yes, the asymmetrical turbo stuff. TVS rotor pack for the M90. Okay, yeah, a twin screw would be completely different, but yeah, the TVS could work with that inlet and outlet. Yeah, Baby Shark. I thought the RX-7 did too, and even more so the RX-7 because it has even less displacement. But would it be possible to run water methanol and no fuel mods? Probably not. You probably can't run enough of that. Yeah, it's better to have it tuned. I have seen people run water methanol injection as their fuels, as an additional fuel supplement because they don't have big enough injectors or something, but it's pretty scary to do that. I just bought an ATI damper to replace I'm going back now. To replace a balancer, to place your dampener on your LS7 because there's no balancer. It's not balanced. Why the heck they use Torx Plus for the little screws? I'm not a fan of Torx fasteners. They have those on the cam retaining plate on LSs too, and it just drives me nuts. Previous turbo on the 304 was a 3582. Yeah, so a 7875 should be a big step up over that. Max torque at 3,000, max horsepower 4,000. Definitely doesn't have that problem anymore. That's very cool though. Twin CT turbos, CT26s. We need to do twin 122s off the GT500s. Well, there's actually no reason that the adapter plates can't be made to fit both of those. I don't know how different the discharge position is, and the discharge position, the mounting position relative to where the snout is, but that might all be possible. I think my decision is made up. Look for a K10 Chevy with 800 horsepower, twin M90s. That would be cool. An M90 on the Sprint motor. An M90 supports a lot of power, a lot more power than the Sprint motor. The Sprint motor is not even a 200 horsepower motor. It's a 70 horsepower motor stock. What would you put twin 122s on? You could put those on an LS pretty easily. Or 122s even affordable anymore? Probably not after doing the videos. It tends to raise the price on stuff. Currently running an M45 through an air-to-air at 10 pounds on a Mazda 4-cylinder. Think about pushing a turbo through it. Do you think the roots can handle the heat before it's cooled? Yes, but I would, if you're going to do a compound, you should do a intercooler between the turbo, and that's how we did it. Do an intercooler between the turbo and the blower. Savage Garage built a small block Chevy with a pair of M90s on it and put it in a Sunbird, took it to Cletus and Cars. I've never seen any of that. I'm not familiar with that at all. Buy a blow-through CSU carburetor and forget tuning injectors. So everyone runs, takes the twins out and runs a big single on the RX-7. I recently learned that a lot of drag racers may only add nitrous to one bank. Why would they do that? I guess an M122 is out of the question for the Sprint motor, just enough to knock the rods out. Yeah, I wouldn't ever do that, but I do want to run the AMR 500 on the Sprint, and then we'll run a turbo on top of that. Have you seen dual centrifugals? Yes, I've run 2 centrifugals. I've run it on an LS and on a big block Chevy. We have 2 torque storms that we ran, but you wouldn't want to feed one into the other. That would be compounding it. You just want to run 2 of them and have them both blow into the motor. That way you get all the airflow, and there's no reason to up the pressure ratio on that. Way back, I remember guys did that with a Vortec, but I'd rather just spin 2 of them and blow them both into the intercooler and then into the motor. One of the things I'm concerned about with on the 5.3 that I had, the one that made 540 horsepower, and we want to try to make more power, which I have a number of things that I want to try. One of the concerns I have is that the crank snout is problematic. It's sort of the damper has already spun on the crank a bunch from me not pinning it when we were running blowers and things on it, and so it has grooved the crank, and I'm worried about that snout snapping off. Alex Limited has been running a brushless electric motor on a Vortex centrifugal blower on a 347. He's been 9s in the quarter and an LTD Fox chassis. He's using the electric motor to spin the supercharger. One or 2 centrifugals would be nice on a V10. Yeah, just the same as one big one. Could leaving my valve cover vent attached to my intake with nitrous act as a stabilizer? What is it going to stabilize? And I like venting those to atmosphere. I don't like drawing oil vapor back into the motor. Yes, the crank is very groovy. It's not good. And it's not just grooved. Like, have you ever seen something that's been rusted for a long time and it's pitted and stuff? That's what this crank looks like. And it's not good. I'm going to have to replace that crank. I'm going to have to, I mean, it's just a 5.3 crank. It's just a Gen 3 5.3 crank. So it's pretty easy to get another one of those that's in good shape. And I can just replace the crank. I don't even have to rebalance it probably. But I do want to do that because I don't want that thing going away. Find nitrous terrifying? You shouldn't. You should try a 100 shot on your Z06. You would like it. Alex, remove the gearbox with a powerful motor turning 30,000 RPM. So he's not driving it off the crank and he's not doing the gear multiplication inside, but 30,000 RPM isn't enough blower speed. I mean, it's got to be more than that, right? Unless is he driving a geared pulley and then that's stepping the pulley up? Thing about two superchargers, for example, your engine will be stressed if it was making 1,400 horsepower, but only making 1,000 because of the parasitic loss. That's true. And the interesting thing is when and this will shed light on it, is when I ran the test of the accessories and then removed the accessories and just ran the electric water pump, the tune didn't change. The power output changed, but the airfill didn't change and the tune didn't change. The reason for that is it was making that power. It was using that fuel and it was making that power. We just didn't see it on the dyno because it was being consumed by driving those pieces. Once those pieces were removed, it's still making that power, but now it's registering on the dyno. So that'll be a cool part of the video. How much of a boost drop do you think there would be for the same horsepower going from a GT35 to a 7875? I'm not sure I understand the question. Do I think that it would take less boost on the 7875 to make the same horsepower as a GT35? Could oil vapor and nitrous work as a booster? I asked? You don't want oil vapor in the motor. You do want nitrous and fuel in the motor. The oil vapor is bad. The oil vapor has a much lower detonation threshold than gas does, and much more than the fuel that you're using with whatever nitrous you're using. So you don't want that in there. You don't want to combine them. That's a bad idea. That's not good. We're gonna go ahead and close our poll out at 52%. So almost split on our airflow and, I don't know, presumably fuel distribution. Because if we're supplying the same amount of fuel and we have a different amount of air, it's going to change the airfield in each one of the cylinders. Yeah, it's pretty close to 50-50. I think when the blower fills that it fills those cylinders up and then fills the plenum and then fills the rest of the cylinders up and then it all gets to be fairly equal, I guess. I don't know. I think that there's going to be a distribution issue. Thinking that the larger turbos are going to move more air at a lower pressure. Here's what I think about those turbos, that you start running into problems with airflow when you get past where the turbo will support. But if you're running them in a range where they both will support the same amount of power at the same boost level, like both the turbos are capable of that. If they both make 10 pounds, I think that they make the same power. I think that the difference you would see is you'd have to start nitpicking stuff and go, okay, look, just because it's bigger doesn't mean it flows more air at 10 pounds. They flow the same amount of air to make that 10 pounds. One of them is just spinning faster than the other. So then you'd have to jump over and ask yourself, well, if one of them is spinning faster, it's definitely going to be on a different part of the map. So where are they now on the map? Is one of them in a better island of efficiency than the other one? They're both flowing. Let's say that they're flowing the same amount of air. They're just doing it at a different speed and a different boost level. So not a different boost level. The boost level is the same, but a different speed. So they're going to be a different part of the map. And the turbos are different. So they're going to be a different part of the map, or maybe a different portion of the island of efficiency anyway, because they're different turbos. So you might see differences from that. But I don't think the big thing comes into play until you're asking the smaller turbo to go beyond what it's capable of. Burns in the house. Sick Burns. Sean, if the heat comment is about what I was talking about with the turbos, if they're both making the same boost, the major element of the temperature is going to be from compression. So that's going to be pressure related. So if they're both making 10 pounds, unless you have a big change in efficiency, if they're both making 10 pounds, the air temperature is going to be almost the same. I would be surprised if it's not the same. One more minute. I got to get to work. I got to do the M90 video. I'm excited. Excited about editing now. There's so much cool stuff. Boosted LS, Junkyard. I can't believe this 4.8. Wait till you see how high this thing revs. This thing had stock springs in it. If one is spinning faster, I expect there's more heat. That the impeller speed doesn't generate heat. The compression is what builds the heat. I have to go get tortured. Oh, the dentist. That's not good. Yeah, the M90 stuff. That's cool. But the 4.8. The 4.8 is the junky 4.8 with the wonky rocker and the wallered out like rocker mount, and then it had the broken camshaft and the broken lifter and the filled up ports and just all sorts of badness. And yet it still runs. But this is the motor that I ran, and it still has that camshaft in it. I ran the Truck Norris NSR cam with the stock springs. So it still has stock springs in it. We revved it out there. So overly built. So answer me this. What do you mean has to work harder? The turbos don't care about impeller speed. If it's spinning at 80,000 or 85,000, that's all fine. It'll do that without any problem. You recommend a fuel pump for a 5.3 GT45 build, 600 horsepower? It's like a 420 or something. Yeah, that's a good point, Nathan. Unless it's E85, then it needs to be bigger than that. You probably have to have 2 of those. Oh, pump gas. Okay. You're good. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. Please, after I put it up today, go watch the M90 video because it should be awesome. Big M90 power. I'll see you guys all tonight. Bam, 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 bam.